Hi everybody, welcome again to the Rantmeister channel. Click on the button below to subscribe and also make sure to click the like button. So as you know, unless you've been just buried under a rock for the last week, Hamas attacked Israel and this attack resulted in over 1,000 Israelis dying. And this is a tragic event, but this also prompts today's discussion, which is on the topic of censorship. Now to start this off, let's start off talking about John Oliver. As you all know, John Oliver is a famous commentator. He has his own show called Last Week with John Oliver. And recently, at the beginning of his show, he said that he would not be discussing the Israeli-Palestinian conflict at this time. And he said that it's tragic and that's terrible, but that he didn't want to dive into it. This contrasts with 2 years ago, in which John Oliver was more than willing to go on in a video about how Israel had done all these terrible things to the Palestinians, and that while of course any kind of attack on Israelis is wrong, but he also believes that Israel isn't innocent. Yet, fast forward 2 years later, the stakes are all raised, and where is John Oliver to be found? Well, I checked his Twitter, or as they call it now, X, and he still, despite it being over a week since the attack has happened, he still hasn't said anything about what is going on. And I wonder why. Well, maybe it's because he knows where the line is, so he's decided not to jump over it, basically abandoning all the pro-Palestinian supporters while they're getting censored. Which brings us to our next topic, which is pro-Palestinian censorship. While the right has been feeling this for a while, getting censored, whether it's talking about the Ukraine-Russian war or whether talking about COVID-19. Now the left is feeling the heat of censorship as well. So the pro-Palestinian left is now throwing allegations at social media companies that social media has been either downgrading their posts in what is a term called shadow banning, and which just simply reduces how many people see your posts. From that to actively removing their posts to even canceling people's accounts. Per CNN, the platform, formerly known as Twitter, was given 24 hours by the European Union earlier this week to address illegal content and disinformation regarding the conflict or face penalties under the bloc's recently enacted Digital Services Act. X says it has removed hundreds of Hamas-affiliate accounts and taken down thousands of posts since the attack on Israel by the Palestinian militant group, even as the European Commission formally opened an investigation into X after previous warnings about disinformation and illegal content on its platform linked to the Israel-Hamas war. There you see it right there, plain as day, right in front of your eyes, that the European Union Commission itself is telling Twitter, you have to censor. Now granted, perhaps it's misinformation, or perhaps it's not. But either way, they clearly are promoting the censorship regime. Besides the virtual censorship in the form of protest bans, banning people's right to self-assembly, are also taking place. Per AP News, France has banned pro-Palestinian protests and vowed to protect Jews from resurgent antisemitism. Per GW.com, a mainstream German news agency, Berlin police break up banned pro-Palestinian rally. From Reuters, quote, "From the river to the seas prompts Vienna to ban pro-Palestinian protests." The police interpreted the slogan above, "From the river to the sea," which is a PLO slogan, Palestinian Liberation Organization slogan, which was later adopted by Hamas, and is interpreting this slogan as an incitement to violence. Not coincidentally, the article also states, Austria's ruling conservatives have in recent years adopted one of the most pro-Israel stances in the European Union. Many non-mainstream news organizations from the American-centric point of view have been reporting on these allegations of censorship. However, you look around and you check the mainstream news organizations these days, no stories are to be found about the censorship regime. And I wonder why this is. Why are they not reporting on this? Well, all these other non-mainstream organizations are. I'll let you decide. However, if you go back to 2021 and 2022, you can find many stories in the mainstream news talking about this topic of censorship of pro-Palestinian posts on social media. So I'm just going to go back to those posts to show you that this isn't a new thing. And it's very likely, given the stakes are a lot higher now, given that now Hamas and Israel are embroiled in a full-scale war, that one might think that these articles are still very relevant today. Time, May 21st, 2021. The latest surge of violence began after protests in East Jerusalem over the potential forced removal of Palestinian families from their homes in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood and the subsequent storming of Al-Aqsa Mosque by Israeli forces in early May. Israel appears troubled by the flood of content on social media, at least enough to prompt Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz to meet with top Facebook lobbyists and many TikTok executives over Zoom last week to discuss misinformation and violent threats on the platforms, according to Politico. Users in solidarity with Palestinians have accused social networks, including Facebook, of censorship, taking down pro-Palestinian posts, blocking live streams, and suspending accounts. Over the last 2 weeks, Seven Amla, the Arab Center for the Development of Social Media, documented more than 500 reports of Palestinian digital rights violations. Guardian, 5/26/2021, Facebook under fire's human rights group claimed censorship of pro-Palestine posts. Los Angeles Times, May 20, 2021. Some users have been intentionally misspelling keywords such as Palestine or Israel. Others have begun interspersing posts about the conflict with more mundane images from their everyday lives. On Instagram, some users are advising their followers that adding a COVID-19 themed "Get Vaccinated" or "Stay Home" sticker to a pro-Palestine post will make it more visible. The Instagram account Land Palestine, which has 167,000 followers, had a comic criticizing Israeli settlements removed for hate speech. On May 5th, the Institute for Middle East Understanding tried to post a version of an informational slideshow the organization had shared in February on Instagram. The new cover image read, "The Israeli politicians emboldening anti-Palestinian violence." It was removed for violating Instagram's community standards on hate speech and symbols. Twitter also suspended several pro-Palestinian accounts, which it attributed to an algorithmic error. Facebook has removed tens of thousands of posts from its platforms at the behest of Unit 8200, the Israeli military cyber unit. In 2016, Unit 8200 flagged some 2,241 posts. That number swelled to 14,238 in 2018. Facebook complied with 90% of those requests. And yes, this is a lot of accusations, and you might be wondering, are these all true? It might just be a bunch of hearsay, a bunch of rumors. It might be people misinterpreting what is happening. Or maybe this just happens to everyone. Maybe this is just the price of doing business, the price of being on social media, is that these things are going to happen to you regardless of who you are, right or wrong. Now, let's look at this article by the Washington Post that came out in September 2022. Outside audit says Facebook restricted Palestinian posts during Gaza war. An independent audit of Meta's handling of online content during the 2-week war between Israel and the militant Palestinian group Hamas last year found that the social media giant had denied Palestinian users the freedom of expression by erroneously removing their content and punishing Arabic-speaking users more heavily than Hebrew-speaking ones. Human Rights Watch, October 8, 2021. Human Rights Watch documented that Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, removed posts, including reposts of content from mainstream news organizations. In one instance, Instagram removed a screenshot of headlines and photos from 3 New York Times opinion articles, for which the Instagram user added commentary that urged Palestinians to never concede their rights. The post did not transform the material in any way that could reasonably be construed as incitement to violence or hatred. All of these posts were removed for containing hate speech or symbols, according to Instagram. The fact that these 3 posts were reinstated after complaints suggests that Instagram's detection or reporting mechanisms are flawed and result in false positives. Yeah, at the very least flawed. But given that Facebook, Meta, Instagram, whatever you want to call it, are conversing on the regular with the Israeli Defense Minister and with this Unit 8200, Israel's military cyber unit, on which has to be discussions about censorship, you tell me, what is more likely? That these are just innocent errors? Or is it more nefarious? Are they doing this because this is what the Israeli state wants them to do? Or even better, maybe it's what the American government wants Facebook to do. And get this, Facebook even acknowledged its error. According to the Oversight Board report, Facebook removed the content for violating this policy, and the user appealed the case to the board. As a result of the board selecting this case, Facebook concluded it had removed the content in error and restored it. After the board selected this case, Facebook found that the content did not violate its rules on dangerous individuals and organizations, as it did not contain praise, support, or representation of the Al-Qassam brigades or Hamas. Facebook was unable to explain why 2 human reviewers originally judged the content to violate this policy, noting that moderators are not required to record their reasoning for individual content decisions. Now that seems a little strange. Why wouldn't you need to record that? Why can you just arbitrarily decide to remove somebody's post without giving any reason whatsoever? Surely, if it's clearly something that's very inappropriate, it seems that the reason would be very obvious. So why not just report it? Reacting to allegations that Facebook has censored Palestinians' content due to Israeli government demands, the board asked Facebook questions, including whether the company had received official and unofficial requests from Israel to remove content related to the April-May conflict. Facebook responded that it had not received a valid legal request from a government authority related to the user's content in this case, but declined to provide the remaining information requested by the board. Again, I have to reiterate, why did Facebook refuse to hand over the rest of the information? Well, given that there's been reports that from, say, Matt Taibbi, that Facebook has been working hand in hand with the American government, with the FBI, to prevent misinformation in the United States by, say, hiding the Hunter Biden laptop story, which could have tilted the 2020 election. And besides the reports that Matt Taibbi found, Mark Zuckerberg actually had a conversation with Joe Rogan, in which Mark Zuckerberg basically admitted to the fact that he communicates regularly with the FBI, that the FBI often makes these informal requests, nudges Facebook to act in a certain way by hinting that something might be, say, Russian misinformation. Well, who's to say that FBI or the American government or the Israeli government aren't also tipping off Mark Zuckerberg that there is just so much Palestinian, pro-Palestinian misinformation, and that we need to make sure that this misinformation isn't being spread throughout the public. And you might think that, oh, well, maybe Facebook just is trying to prevent posts on its page that are violent. And of course, you know, there is some argument for that, obviously. So showing Israeli war images that contain lots of violence and show things that are very gruesome being inflicted, say, on Palestinians might be not desirable for viewers to see. So Facebook would have an interest in censoring this, of course, but Facebook has not been consistent on this point. Facebook has, in the case of the Ukraine-Russia war, allowed these images to spread of Russian airstrikes, and it's even changed its hate speech code to allow targeted attacks on Russian soldiers and the Russian military in the Ukraine-Russian war. Why do you think Facebook acts one way in this one situation and acts in another way in another situation? Perhaps it's because in the Ukraine-Russian war, they're doing what appeases the military-industrial complex. They're doing what appeases the American warfare state. And perhaps in the Israeli-Hamas conflict, they're doing the exact same thing. So now that I've established that there's plenty of allegations flying around of censorship on social media or in the news organizations, and that a lot of this is tied hand in glove with the power of the state, whether it's the American government or the Israeli government or so on and so forth, we need to know the truth. We need to know what is actually happening. So obviously Hamas is doing terrible things, but if Israel is doing terrible things, of course, is obviously debatable. People can disagree, but one thing we should agree on is that we do not need to be censoring information. We do not need to be censoring the news. And I side with the left in this case. I side with those who are pro-Palestinian in the sense that I believe that they should be allowed to be heard. They should be allowed to say what they have to say. They should be allowed to share information. And that we should not rely on the government. We should not rely on the state to tell us what is right think versus wrong think. And this is where I have to say, left, you have let us down time after time over these last several years. While the right has been trying to have its voice on issues such as the COVID-19 pandemic, on issues such as the Ukraine-Russia war, you have persistently enabled the state, enabled the government, either via your support for hate speech laws or for your support for preventing misinformation from spreading. You have been empowering the state with the tools it needs to silence its opposition. Now, let me read this quote for you. It's very famous, and you've probably heard it before, by Martin Niemöller. And he wrote this in the context of the rise of the Nazis. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out, because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me. And there was no one left to speak for me. You can see it yourself. Your support for Palestinians is putting you under the crosshairs now. Realize that censorship will always be weaponized, and eventually it will be weaponized against you. That's all I have to say for now. See you next time.